Childhood was a strange time, huh? You just went up to any kid you met 2 minutes ago and boom, you're best friends. You go to school and instead of learning about algebra or taxes, you're playing with trains and trying to colour within the lines. You're allowed to say the most obscene stuff and get away with it because cute, maybe? I mean, you don't even know what's happening in the world for a good 14 to 15 years, I reckon. At least I didn't. However, for as chill as childhood was for the most part, if you've ever lived, then you know that there are some trials and tribulations awaiting you throughout. Not only that, but there's some creepy shit in there. It's not all sunshine and candy floss. There's some seriously messed up shit in your childhood. So this one's going to be a bit more of an existential one, so hang tight. And anyways, without further ado, this is the creepiest side of childhood Iceberg explained. Up on the tip of the iceberg, we have telling your friends scary stories. I think everyone at some point has done this, whether it be at a sleepover or at camp, or that point in everyone's life where they put the torch under their face and it's all cliche and, you know, tell those stories and that. We're going to be getting dark really quick because I'm going to tell you the scariest story I know, but I'd be interested actually. Please let me know the scariest story that you know down in the comments. This one is The Licked Hand, and it's quite popular, but even today it still creeps the hell out of me. So a visually impaired lady is home alone with her dog for company. She's watching the news and there's a story that there's a killer on the loose in her neighbourhood and that people should lock their doors, close their windows and hunker down. She goes and she closes all of her windows, she locks her doors, bar one, the basement window. A few hours go by and now it's getting late, so she takes her dog with her up into her bedroom and lets it sleep under her bed for protection. The old lady falls asleep. She awakes in the middle of the night to hear a dripping noise from the bathroom. She's understandably quite scared, so to reassure herself, she reaches a hand towards the floor for the dog and is rewarded by a reassuring lick on the palm of her hand. The next morning, she wakes up and goes to the bathroom for a drink of water, and she sees her dog hanging in the shower with its blood dripping into the drain. On the shower wall, written in the dog's blood, are the words, "Humans can lick too." That story used to freak me out as a kid. I hope that you can get some sleep tonight after hearing it. That was one of the scariest ones that I remember. Moving down the iceberg, we have finding out what kind of phobias you have, and also jump scare videos. I had to try and get you before I said there were going to be any jump scares. So apologies for that. So as for phobias, I have a solid phobias iceberg that you should check out if you want. While you're probably not going to be exposed to too many dangerous things as a child, some common phobias such as dark, spiders, heights, dogs, cats, bees, fire, and blood, you probably will at some point in your childhood be acquainted with. It's not like you go out there and try to get scared, but being a child means being scared a lot, and because you don't have much experience with fear, these things can be extremely intimidating because you don't really know how they work. Oftentimes, a bad experience with something in your childhood can lead to a phobia when you're older. But yeah, I mean, I have a full video on that, so go watch it. As for jump scares, again, I apologise. There's something about being 12 and watching like a jump scare compilation that, I don't know if I was the only person to do it, but there's definitely something about them that was just so fascinating to me. I used to do it all the time. Of course, at one point in your childhood, you would have never seen any of the legendary jump scares, so you were very susceptible to all of them. But it's something quite a lot of children do, especially when they're with their friends to try and scare each other. So yeah. Even further down the iceberg, we have the weird side of YouTube. If you've been on YouTube for as long as you would know that for a long time, there has been some on YouTube, and much of it is very weird. From Elsagate back a couple years ago to the modern day torturing and eating of live animals, YouTube has it all. Now, these days, YouTube is a lot better at detecting a lot of this stuff, but if you look hard enough, you can still find it, because there's so much content being uploaded. Sometimes all you need to do is search it up, and it can be found. I mean, a lot of this weird stuff I've spoken about in my YouTube scandals and controversies video, but as a child you misspell a lot and that leads down rabbit holes, and a lot of children these days just let autoplay go on. I think that these days it's those Minecraft school videos. If you don't know about that rabbit hole, it's quite disgusting and somehow YouTube hasn't done anything about it, but that's kind of like the modern day Elsagate. Very weird, very creepy, And yeah, children just find the weirdest stuff on YouTube. Losing your parents at the mall. This one can really apply to anywhere, but losing your parents, especially when you're very young, is one of the most anxiety-inducing stresses that you can face in your young lives. 1 minute they're there and the next they're gone. You've been told about stranger danger, but how are you going to find them alone? You're a kid and, you probably don't have a phone on you. What happens if you never find them? What happens if they just forget and leave you there? Or what happens if they don't want you anymore? What happens after the sun goes down? Where will you go and what will you do? Everyone is a stranger, so you can't trust them. They could be dangerous. I got lost in public places a few times as a child, so I know exactly what it's like. It's very creepy, and the thought that you might never see your family again is, it reduces a lot of children to tears. I was always lucky enough to find a public figure. Usually I found someone that was working or a police officer and told them that I was missing, and I would always be returned soon after, but the dread you feel in the moment is like no other I've ever experienced because you just have no clue. And your parents are probably freaking out even more. Definitely one of the creepier sides of childhood. Up next we have ultra-realistic nightmares. Children are known for their crazy imagination. There's something about them that lets them completely change world inside their minds. A stick or a plastic fork is a character full of life and energy. However, with such a wild imagination and with very little life experience, nightmares can be terrifying. I can remember some of my more frightening nightmares from the time I was 6, better than I can remember my nightmares from 6 weeks ago. The idea that you're in the woods running away from a killer clown, or that your whole family is dead or something, or like a witch is trying to get you, is pretty damn bad, especially if you believe in stuff like witches or zombies or vampires or whatever, which, let's be fair, if you're a kid, you might well do. The science of dreams is weird enough, and I've spoken about it before, but the science of nightmares has got to be even weirder because it's our brains firing random neurons and making ourselves unhappy. If it's my brain, why's it gotta do things that are gonna make me shit myself? The worst thing is that unless you're a lucid dreamer, you never know that you're in a dream. So that makes the entire experience ultra realistic and definitely scary and even more creepy. Abandoned buildings are weird, right? I think every small town has a really renowned abandoned building that there's a bunch of tales and stories about. The idea that someone was there and then they were gone. No person took the building, but eventually natural forces took it. I remember back to when I was a child. My family and I would pass by this building every day on the way to school. It was grey and made of brick. The windows were boarded up with rotting wooden planks and the paint had eroded. The building was beginning to be taken back by the earth. There were vines on the walls of the exterior. When I was a child, this house was haunting to me. I kind of felt a presence within it, and I had to know what was inside there. For years I lay in ignorance, but when I turned 12, I thought that I was big enough to go inside. I knocked on the door in the off chance that someone was inside, but I received no response. It was some holiday, I can't remember, but not many people were out and about. So when I went in, I pried open this wooden door untouched for decades perhaps. The building itself was a victim of mould and damp throughout. The only signs of life I saw were some beetles scurrying across the floor. I traversed through the rooms on the bottom floor looking for evidence of prior inhabitants, but the building was devoid of all of this. In the middle of the desert of silence I was experiencing, I heard an oasis, a tapping on a door upstairs. I composed myself and slowly made my way to the staircase, and with every footstep up to this floor, the tapping got exponentially louder, from a faint scratch at the bottom of the staircase to a vigorously haunting thud at the top. The floor was home to an open child's bedroom as well as a study and bathroom on either side of the hallway, but the tapping was coming from a closed door at the end of the hall. I slowly crept towards this door and began to hear a scuttling as well as a light moan and a persistent tapping. I heard a tapping on this chamber door. I touched the iron doorknob, cold and rusted by a lack of use over the years. Slowly, I turned the knob to the right and pushed. Up opened a dark room, and then I saw it. Okay, sorry. I just had to have one more for the road. That's the last jump scare. I apologise. Down below we have lost memories. The human brain is a fascinating thing. It has to be the pride of modern biology just because of how advanced it is. This squishy thing lives in a person's skull, put man on the moon because of smarts. However, for as advanced as it does indeed have some weaknesses, and lost memories are one of them. You see, the human brain is so big and advanced that in order for humans to survive as a species, human babies are born prematurely because otherwise their heads would be just too big. This is why babies are essentially useless for a few years, and I'm not talking like 5-year-old useless, I'm talking that if there wasn't a responsible person caring for it 24 hours of the day, it will die. Due to us being born premature, our brains aren't developed entirely well, and we generally don't have the capabilities to remember things from the earliest of ages. We forget a lot of stuff as a baby, and then gradually less the more you grow up. We forget a lot about our childhood. Now, unless you have hypothymesia, the chances are that throughout your years of being a child under the age of say 5, you only have a handful of distinctive memories. Even when you grew a bit older, can anyone say they knew what they were doing 4 months after they turned 10? We seem to remember more in flashes and moments than concrete days. Shadow people. So this one is going back to kind of like the hyper-realistic dreams entry, but shadow people are, at least to our best guesses, the result of over-imagination and lack of life knowledge. If somehow you never saw these guys as a child, a shadow person comes in the dark and is simply a silhouette of a person taken on by some force. That is to my understanding at least. I can distinctly remember as a child, I must have been no more than 3 or 4 at the time, I would always see one. There would be very little light in my room, but I always remember seeing a shadow person sitting at the top of my wardrobe. I never knew if he was some sort of guardian angel or perhaps more likely, a demon. I knew that it was there, and it knew I was there. I was never able to achieve any evidence of this figure, and then one day, it was gone. I never had a name for it, never dared to speak to it, and it never left its outpost overlooking my room from above, but perhaps this dark guardian left to overlook another young child once I grew too old. Who knows? We really are at the depths now because this is getting a bit existential. The last days of dead relatives. Unfortunately, time's arrow stops for no one. If you fired yours 80 years ago, it does not pause for a new bowman. Of course, as a young child, the perception of death is uncharted terrain and it's very tough to comprehend. But as we spoke about in the existential crisis Iceberg, many people will deal with death at some point within their childhood, whether that be the death of an older relative or the family pet. Much of the time the information is shielded from you that your relative is dying, but your final visits make up the ending chapter of your story with someone who is instrumental within your existence. Without your grandparents or your great-grandparents, you wouldn't be born. Without your uncles or your aunties, your parents wouldn't be who they are today. As we said before, these moments are often hard to remember because by the time you're older, you forget. But nonetheless, these moments are some of the most important, even if not for you. To be a great-grandparent, for example, to be able to look upon your future generations, the one that you made possible, is perhaps a small comfort in the fact that your existence will carry on through your offspring and their children and their descendants. Even after you're gone, a small part of you will be within them. And finally, we have the friends you made and you never saw again. Extremely bleak, I know, but the world is too big to remain in contact with each person you've had a close relationship with. Whether it be a young boy that you met at the park and had a fun day with, or your mum's friend's daughter whose family moved away when you were 6. Throughout our lives, we will form many friendships, and only a handful will last. To be more specific, it's actually thought that the average human will achieve about 400 friendships during the course of their lives, but only about 1 in 12 of those will last the test of time. That's just saying that you remain in contact too, not that you will always see them. In terms of close friends, things get even slimmer. It's generally agreed upon that if you remain close friends with more than 10 people throughout your life, you've done extremely well, because most people will only maintain a close and intimate friendship with roughly 3 to 7 people. If you're lucky enough to have a large group, look around now. Some people that you love today might walk out of your lives tomorrow, and you will never see them again. I mean, I remember back to my high school days, we had a small year group. There were probably about 80 of us in total perhaps, give or take a few. Now, it's a tradition within British schools to write messages on people's shirts on the last day, and some people who signed my shirt, the people that made the last 5 years awesome at best and bearable at worst, some of those people I haven't seen since. Despite my hometown being extremely small, it's incredible how easy it is to lose touch with someone who loves you, or someone that you love. So, dear viewer, I say this with complete sincerity, when this video is over, why not message someone you care about but you haven't spoken to in a while and ask them how they're doing? We're always so afraid of messaging others we haven't seen. What if I'm annoying? What if they don't want to speak to me? Imagine if someone you like hits you up out of the blue after a long time not conversing. The chances are you'd be happy, it's a good thing, so give them a message. It's too easy to let relationships slip, so be proactive, make the first move, and keep those who you love in your life. And that's it from me. It got kind of f***ed up there towards the end, right? At least it did for me. If you like this video, please do subscribe for more like it. We just hit 7k and we want to go to 8,000 as quickly as possible. So yeah, please hit that big red button. Follow me on all my socials. That's my Twitter, Instagram and Twitch, all at Foxakimbo and all in the description as always. Join my Discord and support me on Patreon too. Links also in the description. Speaking of Patreon, shout out to Cage101101 and Chris M for supporting the channel. And whilst we're on the topic of shout-outs, shout out to Zionist Ash for creating this iceberg that I sampled today. For your chance to be shouted out in a video, send iceberg charts to foxakimbo@gmail.com. And finally, please let me know down in the comments what you'd like to see me do next, as I'm only 52 videos in and I'm already out of ideas. Thank you for watching.